What's going on, everybody? It's Rob Brunson back here again with the electronic intervention. Got another special guest for you today. We have Colin Cosgrove from Laystrom Manufacturing. We're going to talk about metal fab, what it means to be a true US manufacturer, and kind of get into some cultural things as well, which I'm really excited to do. Kind of get into a little bit of a deeper conversation here. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and bring Colin on. Colin, what's going on, man? How are you?
It's a beautiful day in paradise. How are you doing?
It's a beautiful day in North Carolina, too. It's finally starting to warm up here a little bit. It's been really cold, for May in the Southeast. So it's nice. Finally start to go outside a little bit more. So we're really looking forward to that down here. How are you doing?
Yeah, likewise. We're starting to get outside a bit more and starting to enjoy the weather a little bit more. It was, it's been 30 too many times recently. It was 30 last week. So.
Right.
Today's more like 65, 75. So
that's right. Well, you got to understand down here, if it's 60, that's basically 30 for us Southerners. You can see what I'm wearing and it's like 60 degrees outside. So we're a little different. So what I wanted to do is just give you a second just to kind of, tell everyone who you are, what it is you do for Laystrom, and then we'll kind of dive into Laystrom a little bit after that.
Right. Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to give you props and credit. This is, I think, an interesting idea what you're doing here, exploring kind of, longer form, kind of podcast-ish format. I think it's a cool idea. It's a good view.
Thanks.
Happy to participate. I'm, president here. What do I do on a day-to-day basis is, very questionable. A lot of naps.
Right.
No, I mean. Like president in any company does, got opportunity to hopefully influence what everybody else is doing and serve the needs of everybody else here, right? We're a typical manufacturing company where we've got, your production department and you got your sales and your IT and HR. And, if I can remove barriers or just make people's lives a little bit more simpler, more efficient, and support people in what their activities are and try to give people the freedom to go make good choices. I mean, that's kind of how I see my role for the most part.
Sure.
And be able to make the decisions that need to be made.
Right. Absolutely. So what's interesting about you is, you're a president of a metal fabrication company who actually has experience with metal fabrication, right? So you're a hands-on and you actually know exactly really what's going on, instead of sometimes other presidents, they have different backgrounds. For you, it's probably a huge advantage, coming from the industry in the position that you're in now. And that's, whenever I'm talking to customers about Laystrom, that's kind of one of the things that I pitch is, hey, the president of the company, can actually give you a presentation on metal fabrication, which we're going to get into in a little while. So it's a really cool thing. Yeah.
I mean, it's, all of a sudden I've been doing this for 27 years. And I think to your point, so I haven't always been president, right? So I started off in the shop floor. I walked in, my first job was a production operator, bending parts on press brakes.
Right.
And so I've done everything sort of between these two positions and hopefully try to learn a little bit here and there along the way, but it does certainly at times afford me an opportunity, whether it's with customers or internally at the organization,
sure,
to have a, very sort of one-on-one conversation,
right,
about, the application of technology. Like, why are we using that tool on this press brake? Why, why is material moving around the shop in this way? And then with the customer, then talking about design opportunities, I think we've been able to try to really leverage that as a strength between myself, Jeff, who's the plant manager here, who's deep experience in this too, to meet customers kind of where they're at and say, hey, if you can change the welding here, if you can change the forming, maybe we bring value. That's not just about we can cut parts faster on our super cool laser, which we can, but that's all well and good. But if there's something more to the conversation, I think it is an opportunity for us to provide value. So we try to do that.
And I know you guys have added a lot of value to your warehouse and to your manufacturing facility. And you actually, I just got this presentation that we're going to go through. So I haven't seen it. So this is just as exciting for me as it is for everybody else. So I'll be curious to see if it's not in there. I will ask you about the machines and all the money that you guys have invested into, kind of expanding your company a little bit. So with that being said, I want you to tell us about Laystrom a little bit, kind of give us the 30,000 foot view, and then, we can drill down a little bit.
Yeah, so we've been around 70 years this year.
Okay.
And there's been one or two changes in that time, but fundamentally family founded by, Laystrom family. The current ownership is third generation. And the company was a stamping tool and die based company for many, many years, but we've moved on from that as many companies do. The processes, the technologies iterate and develop over time.
Sure.
And as of really effectively about a year ago, we're no longer a stamping company. That's a really big change for us. Up until literally, we're in May now. So right up to the end of last year, we still had presses on the floor. And in the last 18 months, we've actually gotten rid of 21 presses. So that's been a real fundamental change for us.
Right.
And what that has meant is, so we're absolutely 100% metal fabrication and assemblies. Mm-hmm. So that means we've got a lot of, all the things. These things are sort of relative. But metal fabrication technology, you've got laser cutting, press brake, forming, so bending parts. You've got welding, and then assembling product together.
Sure.
Those are relatively low volume in comparison with stampings, but those are all relative. I mean, people who make mining trucks make, very small numbers. People who make tractors make much higher numbers. People who make cars make much higher numbers than that. So we're in that sort of low to mid volume in terms of manufacturing. As a broad, kind of looking at the U.S. domestic manufacturing, we're in a sort of low to mid volume as a general concept.
Right.
But yeah, we've got 70 people, 70,000 square feet, and a lot of stability. We brought in a lot of people in the last couple of years because we've been growing a lot. Mm-hmm. So that's been really challenging, really interesting. The last number of years have been very dynamic.
Right.
As you were indicating, we've brought in new equipment, and what was behind that was this growth and realizing we needed to change the capacity that we could put out of this building. So we're in Chicago,
sure.
Actually in the city limits of Chicago, which a lot of people are like, oh my God, how do you do business in the city of Chicago? That's amazing. Mm-hmm. And it's my answer to that is always, well, we better be good, right? We have opportunities because of the people that are around us. I mean, 10% of our workforce actually walks to work. So we have access to people, which is an enormous advantage in today's world.
Yep.
And we have, because we've been in this building, it's about a 90-year-old building. We've been in here for 65 years.
Right.
We've put a lot of money into the equipment in the building. So you walk in and you see like world-class equipment here. And we have to be able to do that to serve our customers who expect world-class equipment, who expect world-class service.
Sure.
And we're in Chicago. So again, we've got people, so we've got talent, which is enormously important. We've got access to, you can go anywhere from Chicago, whether it's from O'Hare shipping something, or just the highways, the expressways, the interstate. I mean, there's so much that you can get onto freight in and out of Chicago. And a lot of steel is still in the Midwest.
Sure.
So Chicago is not a disadvantage to us. But there's a lot of perception out there that Chicago would be disadvantageous.
Right. And one thing I kind of, I was going to save this for later but we're kind of already on it, being a U.S. manufacturer, right, with the supply chain issues that you've seen and that honestly everyone in the industry has seen, mm-hmm. How has that played an advantage for Laystrom, being in the U.S.? Because one of the things that we've run into with some of our customers is we say, hey, look, sure, you can get it from Asia, Europe, et cetera, but if you're waiting 18 weeks and you're paying a tariff in some circumstances, what is the cost of you not having that product for that amount of time versus being able to get it from a U.S. manufacturer? Maybe you could expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's a real shift in the perception of manufacturing in multiple levels right now in the country. And I've been involved in some activities in the city and in the county here and in the state to advocate for manufacturing. So it's something I believe very strongly. I've spent my career in manufacturing and have found a tremendous opportunity to give to others within that career and see
Sure.
others who have given to the next generation in terms of training, development, and encouragement and mentorship. And that's fundamentally part of what manufacturing is, in my experience. So when I see that, and I see there's still an incredible place to build a career, I believe that is fundamentally still true today. So when the challenge we have in manufacturing often is the perception that there are limitations for growth, limitations for interesting opportunities as a career. And the supply chain right now is, to come back to your question more directly, is amplifying the visibility of manufacturing. And the pandemic has amplified the visibility of manufacturing.
Very true.
And both of those, I think, have, there's a bit of a spotlight coming onto manufacturing. And I think that is great in that more people, if this is done in the right way, if the spotlight is cast in the right way, and the right advocates are able to speak towards the benefits of manufacturing to the individual, to the company, to the regional and state and federal infrastructure,
Right.
all of these tied together. I mean, manufacturing has a multiple, so a dollar put in manufacturing ends up with $1.93 into the rest of the economy. It's better than just about anything else that's out there. Retail is less than, I think, 50 to 70% on the dollar. So the power of manufacturing to build communities is fundamentally true. And to build strong communities and deep communities in that middle class type resources. That is still there as much as ever. That doesn't make it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. Right?
No.
But it's still there. And the visibility that's coming from the supply chain challenges, the visibility of the pandemic, where many people on many levels in political life and in civic life in various ways are saying, hey, we can't have vital resources outside the country. And this is a double-edged sword.
Absolutely.
Right? So the double-edged sword of this is some people, and I read, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, where they were, and I'll paraphrase this, and forgive me if I get it wrong, but I think they were fundamentally saying that the tariffs, the Section 232 tariffs that were put in place a couple of years ago were essentially a failure.
Right.
And many of us who were in the industry felt like they were a failure, broadly speaking, to the country. The point that I would have relative to that is the steel organizations are doing record profits, right? They're doing amazingly.
Correct.
But a lot of manufacturers are struggling to find the steel that they need.
Correct.
And so you've got this price, your supply and demand issues, your classic economic perspective. But the conversation about eliminating those tariffs is coming back, I think, and bubbling back up. I don't know if that'll happen or not, but the supply chain constraints are more and more visible. And if we can focus the leadership of this country on a global, on a domestic manufacturing policy, put true manufacturing leadership right at the upper levels, put a White House reporting position who understands manufacturing, work with manufacturers, work with somebody like the National Association of Manufacturing, somebody that there can be strategies put in place to build manufacturing up in this country and provide deep resources to resolve supply chain issues in a long-term fashion.
I agree with you. And, one of the things that, especially for Americans is when we start to feel something, right? Like we can see the things that are going on, but once we start to feel and it starts to affect us, then that's usually when change starts to happen. So I'll be really interested to see, because right now, I mean, I'm sure, we represent Laystrom, but we represent other companies as well. And the supply chain right now, man, is just, it is a disaster. I mean, it's really, really bad. So it's stressful for everybody. It's stressful for the customer. It's stressful for me as a rep. It's stressful for the manufacturer, because everyone needs stuff. Everyone wants it quick, but it's messy. So I'll be curious to see kind of how, things turn in the next year and a half, because nothing really happens quickly.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to monitor. Well, I'm going to kind of go off subject here and just kind of jump into another, topic that you touched on. And I kind of wanted to talk to you about the pandemic, and how that affected Laystrom. Really, what did you guys do that you were proud of? Hindsight's always 20/20. Is there anything you wish you were more prepared for? And, how does the Laystrom business either shift or evolve during that pandemic? And was it a net positive for your company? I know there's a lot to unpack there. We can kind of take it step by step. So I guess we'll just start with, how did the pandemic affect Laystrom when it first hit you guys?
So we got a little bit lucky, I think, in the sense that at the start of this, if you think back to 15 months ago, back to January of last year, that was when reports started coming with a little more frequency out of China about something happening. And there was a lot of, okay, that's the other side of the world. People, broadly speaking, there wasn't a huge amount of concern initially, but fortunately for us, and this is where I say we got a little lucky, is that I'm in a CEO group with a gentleman, and it's other manufacturers, and one of his divisions happens to be located in Wuhan.
Okay.
And so he was reporting to the group about some of the challenges they were seeing. So we had a little bit of a kind of an early insight of, wow, this is really serious. This is really impacting the manufacturing component. And then as it started developing quickly, I think just because we were just maybe that little bit ahead of the curve in terms of learning about it, we were seeing something coming. And of course, we didn't know how, 575,000 people dead later. I mean, we certainly did not know any of that level of impact.
Right.
But from a manufacturer's, from our business level, we look at it from that perspective. We knew, and also we had friends who were, and it wasn't hurting us at that moment from a supply chain perspective. But people who were buying things out of that part of the world were really being, challenged. And then as it came here, I remember about 2 weeks before. So we were talking about this internally, I guess is the point about it. We were starting to have discussions, maybe 3 weeks to a month before they were really kind of in the front page of everything.
Sure.
And that helped us when it did become front page news. We were very much reacting to it, but not as much as we would have otherwise. So we were able to find a grounding place where we could say, look, what are we talking about here? We've got core values that we rely on here. The first one of those is safety. So we talk about safety, character, connection, contribution, and cultivation. So those safety to being the first one. So what are we going to need to do? We need to take care of people. We were essential as a manufacturer. We knew that early on because we provide parts to medical companies who were providing parts to hospitals. So we had confidence that we wouldn't shut down at all.
Right.
Just because of the necessity of the product.
Right.
And we also supply utilities parts. So those two functions of society were not going to go anywhere.
Sure.
And that turned out to be true. All of our customers at some point shut down, every single one. Mm-hmm. Some of them for 6 to 8 weeks, some of them for 2 weeks.
Okay.
The impact of that then, hit us then in sort of March. So in Illinois, and things shut down a little bit differently everywhere, but things shut down in March, middle of March last year in Illinois.
Right.
And we were deemed essential right away. We knew that. And we've been communicating internally with everybody on staff here saying, look, this is coming. We're going to take this seriously. And if you remember back to that time, there's a lot of just communication was all over the place.
Sure.
And I actually sent out a few emails to the team here internally, but also to basically a broader population, out to all our customers and stuff like that, and said, hey, we're going to take this really seriously. We're not going to Facebook. We're not going to Twitter. We're not going to TikTok, whatever. Like those are great places for humor, for rumor. That's it. We're going to do our best to understand science. And I spent a lot of hours reading back in that time frame, and I know others did here, and trying to understand really what, if you remember back, like, this is flatten the curve. This is, and we were really trying to bias ourselves towards science, the facts as best we can understand them, and not get scared about things. And communicate about that very calmly with everyone here as much as we possibly could. And we shut down all meetings. I mean, by about March 19th, I think I shut down every single meeting for 2 months. So we're done. Right. We don't need to have meetings. People who could work from home, but we're making parts, right?
Well, that's what I was about to ask is, kind of how does it, you got a business where you're actually making stuff and it's hands-on and you've got people in a warehouse. So how does safety protocols, how does that work when, in some circumstances, I need to be standing 2 feet away from you,
Well,
so
we're fortunate in the space that we have and the capacity that we have,
sure.
that we have very few occasions where people need to be in close contact.
Okay, cool.
So, and where we did have meetings or something like that, we end up having everyone spread out.
Gotcha.
One of the biggest things that we did that was responsive to, so we set a record for
Okay.
products in March of last year, and then April, right?
Yeah, right. Quickly.
And that was when our customers really shut down and so on. So what we did was, in response to the decline in demand and the safety protocols, was we switched everything to 4-day weeks.
Okay.
Everyone was working a 4-day week that was in the production side of the business. You could work
Gotcha.
from home, work on Saturdays, whatever, that's fine, or Fridays rather. What that meant was, and they went to 40 hours a week, 4 days.
Gotcha.
And once masks became an obvious part of the solution, that was mandated, no questions asked.
Sure.
We had 97% attendance.
Wow, that's awesome.
Nobody was saying they didn't want to be here. And at some point I asked somebody, who was clearly scared about this. And I said, look, because we gave people the opportunity to stay home. I said, look, if you need to stay home, you
Right.
got stressed about this. We understand that. Let's, again, safety first. Let's prioritize these things appropriately. Everyone wanted to show up for each other.
Wow, that's great.
So
Congratulations on that. That's a big deal.
It was just tribute to everybody here who wanted to show up and do their part to be part of what we saw as a solution. And we had a customer who literally sent an order saying, COVID-19 parts across the top. Like, okay, that's going to the top of the line. Like, we're going to use that. Here we go. Accelerate that through. And so we were able to respond in that respect. But switching to 4-day weeks is a really big deal, because what it meant was the building was shut down Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Right. And at the time, very early on, some of the science was coming out saying if this was on a surface. Now, a year later, the general accepted perspective is that this
goes away pretty quick.
It's aerosolized and so on.
Sure.
That's really the impact. It's not so much about things you touch. But at the time, that was certainly everybody believed a key component. But on stainless steel, and we got a lot of that here,
right?
It was 72 hours on stainless steel that it could remain active. Well, if we're shut down Friday, Saturday, Sunday, by Monday morning we're clean.
Right. Good point.
And what that meant was everyone felt secure.
Sure.
Every week. And so there was a lot of thought, as much as we could, to give to the emotional and psychological impact this was playing on everyone's lives.
Right. Absolutely.
And so, that was something that you did for 8 weeks, I believe, maybe 9 at the end.
I was going to ask you if it stuck around and for how long. So
it was about 8-9 weeks. And by that time, the surge had kind of dropped very significantly.
Right.
The people were getting more acclimatized to the risk involved in whatever they were doing in a day-to-day. We had one person who had a positive test in May. Other than that, we had 0 people with a positive test of employees.
Great.
Up until October, November, we had a really challenging time.
Right.
And when that second surge hit, and then in January with some people out. But other than that, we felt like things were going really well through the summer.
Sure.
And we brought back in the people started asking for full-time work, and the demand started coming in from our customers again after 8-9 weeks. So we started bringing those Fridays back, and then eventually bringing Saturdays back, and things like that as demand picked up.
Right.
And then dropped off. We scaled back again. And so, in our fiscal year, our financial year, we actually set a company record. Our sales were actually up 10%.
That's awesome.
Despite the pandemic, which is just incredible. So in the same year as the pandemic hit, we divested our stamping department and increased our overall business by 10%. I mean, just completely nuts year.
Sure.
And I would argue probably for everybody in the building, probably universally the hardest year of anyone's career.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I would absolutely say that for myself.
Sure.
And so, tremendously proud of what the organization did in that time frame. So, we also, so last year we also got the Inc. 5000, which is because that was from actually the previous year, but we won that basically in 2020. We got that award.
Well, tell us what that is. Go. I want to talk about that.
Right. So the Inc. 5000 is America's fastest growing private companies.
Okay.
And so we were recognized on that list for our growth between 2017 and 2020.
It's amazing.
And so that was fantastic. Incredibly proud of the team here for doing that. And that allowed us to do the investments, bring in a fiber laser, 6 kilowatt fiber laser with automation, bring in a press brake. We brought in 2 more press brakes since then. Don't think you even knew about that.
No.
Our staff has grown in 3 years by 50%.
Wow.
Our business got up by 70% in 4 years. So we last year, this is the, I don't know if you can see that on there, the Fourth Revolution Awards by the small to medium manufacturer of the year. That was last year also. So that was an award we won last year, which is really cool. That's really about community involvement and innovation.
Right.
And then this year,
there it is.
The fabricator, that's the FMA, which is the publication of our industry in fabrication. They recognize us with basically their Manufacturer of the Year award in 2021. So it's
been a whirlwind. You've had a lot going on, man.
We got a lot going on. It's been incredibly challenging.
Right.
But the team here is just a phenomenal group of people who just want to show up for each other.
Yep.
And put out the best work that we can put out. And it's just, it's everyone here that deserves the credit for doing it.
Well, I think it says a lot about your culture, and, I know you're not someone who likes to take a lot of credit, but I truly believe it has a lot to do with you, and it has a lot to do with your background and being someone who is on the factory floor and work. You can relate to the guy who, works a 9 to 5 all the way up to the executives, and, having that kind of leadership and someone who knows how to navigate everything. That's just a huge testament to you and the culture that you guys have built there. So it's something that you guys should be proud of. I'm sure you are, but it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that the awards, the growth, everything is underpinned by the work we've done within the culture, and that was. So I came became president in 2016. So the 5th president in the company history. So 5th in 70 years.
Right.
So
you guys are like the Pittsburgh Steelers. You don't change head coaches often.
Right.
There you go.
Right. Yeah. And so that's I think that says a lot about the organization just there.
Absolutely.
We have, our longest serving employee at this point, longest serving, so I don't have the way of putting it that way, but our longest tenured employee has been here for 47 years.
Wow.
The second longest is 44, next is 37. So we've got a bunch of people who've been here a long time.
Yeah.
And
they've got Mark beat. I know Mark, our president. They've got him beat. I'm not going to put the number on how long he's been here because I
won't either. I do know
keep him on my good side for right now. But 47 years, it's a long time. So
it is, and so we've got and that he's not the record holder either.
Right.
There was a couple of guys who retired a few years ago who were over 50.
Wow.
And I think the longest was maybe 58 years.
Sure.
So
that's incredible.
Again,
that's a long time.
People who stay here a long time. We got an email about a year ago. It was December 2019, maybe into January 2019.
Right.
And it was from a woman whose mother had worked here in the 80s. And she emailed us to express her gratitude towards the organization for the memories that her family had about the work that her mother did here in the 80s.
That's amazing.
Fantastic.
Right.
Appreciation for how to take care of people, and a reminder of what we're about. I mean, we're a metal fabrication company, and we do that well, and we got the best technology you can have, but fundamentally, like any company, especially any small company, we're about the people that are here.
The people run the business, man. The business 100%. Doesn't run itself.
Absolutely, and I appreciate your kind words, but I think my perspective on that is that one of my favorite quotes is from Simon Sinek, who's
he's good. I like him a lot.
Yeah, one of his points is that leadership is not about being in charge. It's about the people that are in your charge.
Sure.
And I think that subtle phrasing is something that resonates with me. I think it's something that's very important. That the responsibility I have here is to the 70 people They don't have a responsibility to me. I have a responsibility to them.
Right.
And to, guide, mentor, serve, all of the above. And so, that allows, that way of thinking is just a continuation for what Bob Laystrom did here for many, many years. I mean, Bob was the president here for 27, 28, 29 years, on an exact number.
Right.
And, there's a lot of people that Bob hired who are still here, and they were here for a long time working for him. There's a reason, for that. And it's a guy with deep integrity and character, who knows how to treat people well and treat people the right way. And that, I mean, I've worked for him for 15 years. I mean, there's that doesn't come from nowhere. So we didn't have to do some great, like cultural change or
sure.
Turnaround type of thing 6 years ago. But when I came in, I do bring a different style and a different way of doing things than Bob.
Right.
And
which is okay. It's honestly probably a good thing.
It was. I mean, that's why he hired me, right? It's just bring a different spirit to leadership in that
sure.
sense, but with the same values or the same alignment. And that's really where we started building, myself and Jeff Deck, the plant manager, and the rest of the team here, started building, over time, more and more, talking more about culture, just having it up front in conversations, working with, we redeveloped the core values 3 years ago, again, of character, contribution, cultivation, and connection.
Right.
And that was done with a process where we had 25% of the workforce involved in that process.
Right.
And went through I was just talking something last week. It was about a 12-week process to really get interesting, in-depth conversations about what does something like core values mean? What do they mean here? What do they mean to us? What is representative? And the word character was Bar, our customer service manager, who came up with our character. Cultivation was from our maintenance manager. Sure. And this wasn't a top-down. I was doing facilitating of these discussions,
right?
But I was in guidance, but I was doing very little, forcing the conversation forward.
Sure. Well, it's really easy to stick a sticker in the break room, and say, everyone love everybody. This is the way we're going to, but it has no meaning because no one really had any input, right? It's something that somebody else said who's an external source, really trying to get down to what is our culture, for us at being Wallace, or for you, Laystrom. It's so fundamentally important. So whenever employees start, they know, one, what's expected, and two, what they can expect, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a give and take thing, and it's just really important, man. So I think it's really good. This is, to be honest with you, this is why I was excited to talk to you, because I knew we would kind of get into these discussions, and this is really good stuff. What I wanted to do, and we'll jump back onto some other stuff here in a second. I wanted to pull up this presentation that you sent me, and I'm going to kind of let you guide this, and you let me you tell me how we want to go through it. And we'll do that. So this is the fundamentals of sheet metal fabrication by you. I'll go ahead and say there's not a lot of presidents of manufacturing companies who are putting together fundamentals of XYZ. So this will be pretty cool here. So take it away, man. I'll let you drive, and I'll click through it as you tell me to.
Yeah. Let me start with this. Maybe 10 years ago, a customer came to me and said, it was a really big customer who I probably shouldn't name, a name that everybody will recognize, a monolith in American manufacturing, right? And they recognized that because they had outsourced so much knowledge, they had a real, what they call a brain drain at the time. And what it meant was their young incoming engineers just had a lack of knowledge that they weren't able to overcome. Right. What used to happen was, young engineer comes in from University of Iowa with a mechanical engineering degree, and wants to make a bracket, and goes but doesn't have any experience. And they would say they would go to the 50-year experience or 30-year guy in the model shop, and the guy in the model shop would say, you can't make it the way you designed it. That's nuts. What are you thinking? Right. And they'd have a dialogue. And the younger developing person would learn from the more senior person. Well, when they had cut out all the more senior people, they lost all that transfer of knowledge. And they admitted that. And so they said, we don't know what to do about this, and it's a real struggle for us. And so I offer it. So, well, why don't I come in? And they said, this is a fantastic idea. And I said, I can do just fundamentals, right? Metal fabrication. If you're sort of at a college course of sheet metal 101,
sure,
this would be a 1 hour to 2 hour version of that.
Sure.
And so that's where it started from, and I've done that since then at, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9 different places, and universally people, especially with engineers, that's primarily who I'm talking to. They're able to ask a lot of questions, and I try to ground this in real world applications, real world examples. So it's less theoretical, because you can go to the books, you can study various different things on. If you want to go to YouTube, you can find things there. If you want to do, your college, application, you can, in terms of knowledge, you can go and look at college courses and stuff like that. This is more sort of pragmatic, practical, experience based. And so that's the idea behind this. And then it just sort of runs through a variety of examples, and then lets the student, if you will, who's typically a customer, a potential customer,
right,
ask questions and say, well, what do you mean by this? And can you look at this application? And that turns into an opportunity for us to provide value that has some context. And if no business ever comes from that, so be it. That's fine. It's putting something hopefully useful out into the world.
Well, it's certainly valuable, right? To your point, this is one of the ultimate ways to bring value to our customer. So I think it's wonderful.
This is what I don't know, like 60 slides long. So if you want, we could take like 4 or 5 minutes and run through it pretty quickly. And
sure, you just tell me where to go, and we can jump through it.
Let's skip that. Yeah. So fundamentally, I would be saying, what are we doing here? I should go back up one. Go back if you can.
Yeah, sure.
So the second part of this, obviously we're talking about you typically in front of a customer, right? I'm saying, why does anybody care about design fundamentals?
Right.
Who's involved here? And then what are the processes around metal fabrication, and then some examples, right? That's basically the idea. So to start off with, we go ahead, what are we trying to do? Lower product costs, get rid of quality problems up front, so on.
Right.
And so the example I give on the next page is the customer. This is a real life example. A customer came to us, and this was an existing customer, and said, we are looking for improvement on this product. They were very, very good. There were a company that was involved in biometrics, and they were very good at what they did in the electronics and the cosmetics, and they had kind of lost what they had known about metal fabrication.
Sure.
With some engineering loss that they had. And they felt like this was an area that could make some improvements on this particular product. And it's got a bunch of wiring, ultimately the next level of assembly and so on. And they said, well, we think we can do maybe better here, but we don't have the mechanical engineering and mechanical assembly skills that we once had.
Sure.
And we said, oh, great. So we pulled our engineering team together, and we come up with 21 ideas in 3 hours. And a very simple example, that white phenolic bracket that's up on the top there, we suggested, hey, you could change that to a metal fabricated bracket, get rid of the 2 white ones that are up on top, get rid of that 1.5 inch long piece of hardware. Those are $1.50 each. And you replace those with a couple of bends. There's 3 parts on the bottom. They've got 6 rivets in them. It was just fundamentals, right? It wasn't complicated, but it was what we do every day. That's the thing. It's what we do every day.
Right.
And we gave them 21 ideas. They couldn't use 5 of them because of design constraints. They could use 16, and because of the volume of the product, we're going to save $250,000 on this. This is amazing.
Sure.
And they're like, wow, you guys are stunning. I'm like, we just know what we do. This is our area of expertise.
Sure.
The person who designed this, I'm 100% confident they had shares in hardware companies, because there's so much hardware in this stuff. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. But we know metal fab. We could apply that knowledge, and we went on our way. And that's the type of application impact that this can have when it's well done.
Right.
Let's keep going on. We'll skip through a bunch of these, because I think for the sake of anybody who's watching this, they don't want to see, a lot of heavy text. Different examples. So I'll go back to one part. So this part, customer came to us and said, hey, again, we need help with design. We're designing the next generation of this. Can you guys contribute to the conversation? So I'd love to. Happy to do so. We're not designers, but again, design for manufacturability, that we can help with. So we took this product and we helped them design it, and you go to the next page, 68% bigger, lower volume of parts, so 20% more product, actual part components, number of components, and we come up with the same cost.
Wow.
So a relatively, you complicated product, you got 30 or 40 components in here, and we're able to deliver, again, that design for manufacturability. And these parts are made without fixtures. These are all welded together because we poker yoked the parts and designed in a slot and a tab where these parts are intersecting with each other.
Right.
We were able to get to no fixture costs and improve our welding and make sure there's more consistency in welding. So
Gotcha.
we designed the manufacturing process at the same time as the design of the actual part, the assembly itself.
Sure.
So let's go ahead from there. Different examples. Like we'll just go to the first line, your proper dimensioning. What impact does that have? You go to the next page. The next. I'm sorry. We'll go a couple more because this just talks about that's who we are. We
Right.
cover that. There's different industries we're in. This is what we're about. So this is our cultural component. Like this is our production purpose. This is what we do as a business. The next one is our core values.
Sure. That's what you talked about.
Yep. And then again some of the award stuff.
Right.
So okay, we go to the you look at dimensioning schemes. If you go ahead one more, I think.
Tooling options.
Okay, so these are different. So this was the unfold. I think you go to the next page. There'll be a part here.
Yep.
Yeah. So I went to one of our engineers who does all of our programming, or the vast majority of them, some years ago, and I said, if you had to suggest to the engineers in the world that you interact with, what's one thing they could do that would make, as a broad statement, he sees these incoming designs from agriculture, construction, utilities, medical, musical, all these different areas, packaging, so on.
Right.
I said, if you had one suggestion for the engineers, what would it be? And he said, every single time you add a feature to a product, you click the unfold button. That's how it works. Because you will know immediately if you've created a problem. And if you did it every time, you would eliminate hours upon hours of the engineer's time trying to deconstruct the intent of the design.
Sure.
And so it was a time to market issue. And when we're doing a lot of parts, we do parts here, sometimes we're turning parts around in 3, 4, 5 days. And so you don't have a half a day's worth of work to lose on the upfront engineering. And so that was one, he said, you use the unfold every single time. This was also a part where
makes sense.
There was 685 dimensions on this print.
Oh my gosh.
And somebody, the ordinate dimensioning, and you got to question whether some of them really had value when you could have said, refer to the SolidWorks to get the dimensions on this. Because if you're making the part to the SolidWorks model, you're going to make it correct. You know if you get the right unfolding and you get the right settings on your laser. If you're laser cutting parts, you're going to be right if you're doing it to the SolidWorks model. So that 685 dimensions, if you got to do a PPAP with that, you could be talking about spending 3 or 4 days just doing a PPAP. Right. And that's an enormous time impact.
Oh yeah.
So if you don't need it, then why do you have it on there? These are things to think about from a design intent.
Sure.
This was also a part that had we ended up having to remake this part completely from scratch, because on the page 7, I think it was, of the drawing, there was an issue with a silk screen, and the screen was actually called out incorrectly. We made the part per print, but the print was wrong, and that wasn't caught until the very last step, which was the silk screening, and they couldn't use it. We ended up having to completely remake the part at very high cost.
Right.
So all the detail, and the more detail you have on a print, sometimes you need it. Look, sometimes you have to have that detail on the print. But if it's extraneous detail, if you don't need it, sometimes the risk is you end up with clutter on a drawing, and it actually subtracts from the intent of the design.
Of the actual, That makes sense.
So let's go to the next. So again, that's application considerations. Do you have the right data points identified? How is it going to be measured? I mean, sometimes you get parts, and the orientation is such on the drawing, which is where you try to intention. If you don't know what the application is, and the drawing is all you have, you're going to try to kind of replicate the drawing view to do your dimensioning scheme as you're doing measurement.
Sure.
So if you don't need that, and if you can turn it where a part is laying flat and it gets a lot easier to measure, you can save a lot of time. It just depends on the application, let's keep going on to the next. And this is a part of that came true. So this is a part where the 4 holes that are out in the outer area, you can see those are kind of slotted. They
Right.
provide for a lot of movement, and the customer did a really great job of intentionally using the right reference points for the drawing on this, where they weren't tying those external dimensions to internal dimensions that had no bearing to each other. So it was
Right.
actually a really well-intentioned design on this one when the dimensioning was done.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next page. So then we get into some of the applications
Right.
with lasers, and we're not going to do it here, but we spend a decent amount of time kind of going through why would you put something on a laser versus a turret? What are the design limitations? What are the what are behind the choices of different technologies we would use? And what you're seeing here, you've got a shuttle that's it's serving 2 different lasers, actually 2. We're typically in Amada shops. We've got Amada technology, so we've got 2 4 kilowatt CO2 lasers, and then last year we put in the 6 kilowatts, so 6,000 watt fiber laser. So the fiber laser it flies. I mean, it's amazing to watch it work. And both these are all automated. They can all run lights out. So, we walk out of here on Friday. We've got a second shift, so we're walking out of here, 10 o'clock Friday night. Turn the lights off. These things still run all weekend.
Sure.
Let's go to the next page. And so these are just different examples of turret designs. We don't need the detail on this. We're not doing stampings anymore, so it doesn't matter. And press brakes, some of the challenges. Go to the next page. And one of the examples we've given here is you've got a hole near an edge. Well, when you're forming that part, what happens to the hole? The hole tends to stretch out if it's near the edge. And what do you do about that? You look for some different ideas about how can you design that hole differently? Is it going to have an impact on what you're trying to accomplish?
Sure. Is
there hardware near the edge that can be impacted by that hole stretching out? These are considerations you got to think about.
Right.
Using the same radius, if you're making a part that's got 4 different forms, if you're using 2 different radii on those forms, you're probably only going to end up having a more costly setup. If you do a consistent radius, meaning consistent tooling, and meaning the same tool for each hit, maybe you got a less costly setup, and it doesn't necessarily impact your design application. So So welding is an area that often has very high cost. It tends to be, not always. You can certainly automate welding, but a lot of time it's a manual process and it's time consuming. And it's critically important to the application of the product, but it can really be a cost driver. So we go to the next page. This is and it can have unintended consequences. So this is a customer who called us a number of years ago and said, it was a medical device, and you can see what's happening here. This bracket is being bent out of shape by the weld. So the customer called me up and they were pretty annoyed. They were local to us, and they were pretty unhappy because they were having to spend all this time cranking down on these nuts, this bolt here that you've got nut and bolt. And they were very, they were pretty annoyed because it was taking a lot longer to assemble these pretty intense mechanical assemblies for this medical cart.
Right.
And I said, well, yeah, can I, this is pre-COVID, right? So can I come see the issue? Can I come to your place and see what's going on? And so I took a picture when I got there, and I said, yeah, I can see what's happening. You've got the weld, it's right there. You've got an interference between the mounting bracket that's on that's holding the you've got the angle bracket is just that right angle that's welded to the tube, and then you've got this motor mount bracket that's being bolted to it. And I can see what's happening. You've got this big issue here, and I said, I'm really sorry that we did this. We didn't intend to, obviously. And well, we came back and we looked at the print, and the parts were made per print.
Right.
And what had happened was, in the SolidWorks design, the weld bead was not accounted for.
Gotcha.
So it was just this right angle bracket put up against the tube, and the weld bead was not in there, was not laid in. So nobody in the design step observed that there was going to be this interference issue.
Gotcha.
And so we called the customer back and said, look, here's what's going on. This is both of these parts are perfectly per print. We had done the PPAP, so we're kind of confident it would be, but we still didn't like what's going on here. And they're like, oh no, this is terrible. Okay, we got to move the weld. Right, let's weld on the sides, let's weld on the bottom.
Right.
We're going to double up the welding because we're concerned about the strength issues. And I said, wait, hold on. So why don't we just notch the part? Or just notch out the little motor mount bracket there.
Yeah.
So you give clearance to the weld. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay, that's a good idea. So sometimes you don't want to overthink the solution, right? And sometimes you just got to, what's the practical, observable, and that is zero cost impact then, zero impact on the strength of the bracket.
Right.
And it was a very simple solution to put in place.
Cool.
But the trick of it was nobody was observing from the assembly issue that the weld was going to be in there.
Right.
And that's something that we regularly see when you get to assembly levels, that the welding is often just unaccounted for.
Right.
Let's go to the next page. The next one again. So this is a part, again, we built this. This is basically a table, and it is 120 inches by 60 inches, roughly speaking.
Okay.
So it's a big part. We have zero fixturing, none, no fixturing at all. We weld the whole thing together. It's all aluminum welding.
Wow.
And the end parts look very similar to each other. We've designed them with the slot and tab, again, where one part is fitting in with the other part. And what that means is we have zero fixtures. We just pull the parts up against each other, make sure they're square, and we're off to the races with welding. So we eliminate fixture cost, and because of the way we design them, we can't swap the left hand and right hand parts. We can't swap either end out. So we've got fully designed into the process. And that was really about having a very open conversation with that customer about design requirements and then manufacturing requirements, and marrying those two things together.
Sure.
Let's go to the next page. So again, back to the hardware issues.
Right.
We can keep going from here. So again, one of the big parts with hardware, if we keep going, we can switch past these.
Okay.
And keep going. So there's different opportunities for different types of hardware is usually just about joining materials together. So sometimes you need to screw parts together, sometimes clip them together. It's just, these are all different ways that we can do that.
Right.
One of the key points with hardware, though, is we have seen far too many times over the years where somebody will find a piece of hardware that's kind of unique and interesting and think that's a good application, and it might be a good application, but if you can't get it for 6 weeks or 12 weeks, you were talking about supply chain issues earlier, this predates all of that. You use some sort of interesting, fabulous looking hardware, but you can't find it in stock anywhere. That's a huge issue. Or you might have a minimum buy. You want to make 25 parts or something, or even a first time run. You just want to test something out. You want to make 5 pieces, but you got to buy a minimum run of 1,000 pieces of hardware, and it takes 12 weeks.
Right. Well, I sent you something that looks like this today. We haven't talked about it, but I guess I'll go ahead and email my customer back and let them know that we'll be able to do something like this. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. We'll take it. I'm just kidding. We'll download offline and talk about that one.
Exactly. But the key part with hardware is if you go to PEMNET, PEMNET, PEMNET.com, you can look up for Pen Engineering. You can look up their hardware inventory.
Wow.
So you can see if the hardware that you want to use is available or not. And
will you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, if you scroll up a handful of pages.
Keep going.
Up the other direction.
Oh, sorry.
It is one more. Right there.
Right here.
So
this website.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So if you go to that, you can go and you can see what inventory is there. So if you go down to, we've got a couple more examples in it. I think we're going to, so this is, So again, these are parts, again, we talked about doing some quick turn product. These are parts that we turned around, again, 36 components with 21 part numbers that we did in 3 weeks.
Sure.
Delivery. So it's kind of work that we do. And we did a lot of work. That was hey, we got to make these right away. We then did a lot of work with that customer afterwards on improving the design.
Right.
So we can go down from there. Yeah. Let's keep going. Yeah, material reduction using nesting is a big deal. If you go to the next page, I think it's so we ended up helping a customer redesign this, and we're able to take some of the brackets that they designed out of 13 gauge. It was mating up with 14 gauge, and we said, let's design that bracket out of 14 gauge, put it inside of an open area on the sheet. So we're actually eliminating material costs completely. And we added gusseting to strengthen up that bracket.
Sure.
And so then we just put a couple of ribs in. That's no cost in the forming, a little bit of tooling cost. And we made a substantially stronger part with lower material cost.
Right.
So it's a big deal, especially right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, let's keep going. These are other just design ideas for material reductions.
Okay.
That really, again, giving a lot of strength into a part.
Right.
So you get a lot of plating information. You got on one more, I think, one of the best resources that you find. I think there's another page after this. This one here. So this is a bunch of different resources. Just an introduction to different types of finish that are available for metal fabrication.
Sure.
And just a summary of what they are and description. And yeah, this is one of those where the customer actually just got an email from customer today. We made some parts for them, and they emailed me right after and said they love the parts, they look fantastic, they fit fantastic, but they were concerned actually was about to look to cosmetics. And it said there's a little discoloration here. All they were using a black chromate, which is a zinc finish. It's not going to be completely homogeneous. It's going to have a little bit of variation in it.
Right.
And so having those expectations and understanding when we can upfront with a customer what those expectations. These are two different aluminum parts that go together. All of a sudden, they don't look right together, but you're not going to guarantee. No plater I know, these are actually anodized, iridized.
Sure.
Nobody that I know is going to guarantee your finish on that.
Sure.
And
So with like the colors and stuff, right? So with paint,
yeah.
how does that work? Right. So let's, I want this color red, and then, Steve down the road wants this color red. How does that work for Laystrom, right? In terms of getting those colors.
So we have a supply chain partner, or one of our biggest suppliers, one of our key suppliers is the painter that we work with every day of the week. And so we have so much variation in a product that we do that it doesn't make sense to have an internal paint line.
Sure.
Because it'll be changing over all day long. So we go with a paint source. And that's one of the other things about being in Chicago. You can get anything you want, right? You can get any solution you want. So what we have with the guy who's 15 minutes away from us is they've got 3 or 4 paint lines. So they're constantly doing changeovers. That's part of their world. So with powder coat, and they're powder coated, you can specify the finish. And what you generally want to do is you can specify different Pantones or RAL numbers. And when we do that, ideally, the customer will have a paint chip, we will have a paint chip, and the supplier, the painter, will have a paint chip, and they're all the same. They're all produced at the same time, and will all be agreed on that being the match. And then you can look at the paint chip next to the part and make sure that they match each other and you can put parameters around what the lighting needs to be for that.
Right.
And you look at those together, and you'll be able to confirm by eye that paint finish is what it should be.
Gotcha.
Now, plating, again, you're going to have more variability in the plating. With the painting, you're going to have consistency.
Sure, right, exactly. That's what was curious to me, because there's so many different colors that you get a Lowe's and you look around.
Is get paint chips, and with the paint chips, you'll eliminate that issue.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So again, lots of process alternatives, and the idea of this whole presentation is to have a dialogue with the people that you're engaging with, where you're talking about, how would you use a plastic edge protector? We saw that one part had a bunch of different plastic edges on it. Did it need it? In some places it did, in others it didn't, as it turned out. And so sometimes it's really about questioning, right? It's just about that, trust but verify kind of thing. Yes, I want to trust that you've designed this well, but let's have a conversation where we're verifying that you've taken all the things into account that you can take into account.
Right.
There's a few more examples, I think, of pictures of parts. So this is a part. The grain direction. The components had a different direction specified for grain than the door versus the frame.
Right.
The grain direction was specified differently.
Sure.
And that wasn't realized. And this is a cosmetic part. It looks beautiful. But until we got to the final assembly, nobody realized it was actually a different call out because the development of the part was split out between different people. Mm-hmm. One engineer, so the one engineer was responsible for the total design. But it was a different engineer drew up the door versus drew up the frame. They transposed the grain, and all of a sudden you've got something that doesn't match very well.
Cool.
So identifying something like that, again, this is a part where the weld, these are aluminum parts are welded in the corners, all 4 corners, but only 2 of them need to be ground. The other 2 don't need to be because they're not visible. And so it's a very smart thing by the customer is like, hey, let me take this cost out of here. We don't need it. And as a customer, it wasn't our suggestion. They came to us this way. It was a clever idea. Like, just put the grinding where it's necessary. Don't put it where it's not necessary.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. Let's go to the next page. So this is the part where we made some homemade tooling for a whole bunch. You see that rib up on the top. You can kind of see it in that top aluminum component. That was some homemade tooling. The prior person that was doing that before us was doing 75 hits per part on the turret.
Okay.
And we ended up doing, 75 hits, and there were 6 different ribs. So I'm not fast enough to do the math on that. I'll let you figure it out later.
That's a Mark question. He's the math guy.
It's a lot of hits, is what it is, right? So I'm going to have to do it. That was 450 hits, whatever it is. Anyway, so the bottom line is we were able to do it with a press brake tool, do it in 6 hits.
Okay.
And then second application for these parts, if you go down to the next page, that whole front panel there was actually hardware. You can see go up one from there. That hardware is on the front panel of that assembly. The previous one with the
this bad boy.
No, before that same one there.
There we go.
The hardware that was on the front is actually really tricky because that hardware needs to be put in after the screening is done.
Gotcha.
And it's that was a fun trick to figure out the right way of doing that without causing any cosmetic issues with those parts.
Gotcha.
We actually had it no quoted several times by suppliers because they felt like they couldn't do it.
Okay. Yeah, I do. I mean, it looks very complicated. I mean, there's a lot going on
There's
here.
a lot going on there.
Yeah.
The next 3 pictures all go together.
Okay.
And this is a product. You see there's this heat resistant foam and pressure sensitive adhesive on here.
Okay.
You go to the next 2 pages with the same product with the foam taken off and then just deconstructed into a flash and formed parts.
Gotcha.
And so this is a part where a customer came to us and said, hey, we want to see if you're interested in making these parts. You tell us, you can do these kinds of assemblies. And we'd love to take a look at these. And I said, great. Here are the specs, so on. And we took a look and we reviewed it internally. We pulled a team together. We went back to them and said, if we make this part, it'll be like $67.
Okay.
This was several years ago. But if you allow us to make some changes, we can significantly reduce that. And,
okay.
And it wasn't actually $67, but I'm going to make that number up because it's going to go to a public place and no one else is going to be looking at it. But so we can call it $150 if we want. But
yeah, that's right.
We looked at it and said, hey, if you allow us to make a couple of changes, we can significantly reduce the price on this part. And so we collaborated together to reduce the price on this part. And so it was truly a collaboration with the customer, understanding what their needs were, their design intent, and able to reduce the part with using our supply chain knowledge as well as our old internal competencies.
Gotcha.
So it was a really fun project to work together on.
Cool.
No,
I say.
Different part again. It's a fun product where again it's hard to tell on here, but you can a little bit see that you got 3 parts that end up welding together. You got 3 parts stacked together here.
Right.
I've actually incorporated the weld bead into the inside. So the part that's sandwiched in between the 2 others, we actually put a relief in there and we got the weld that's inside that relief.
Gotcha.
And so it vanishes once it's painted, completely disappears. It's a really fun design.
Yeah, you can kind of see how it's stacked together here a little bit.
Yeah.
Neat. So here's all the links right there.
Bunch of links, bunch of resources. One of the ones that there was one in the middle here called finishing.com. It's a fantastic resource. There's literally 50,000 questions and answers about finishing. Ideas, techniques, applications. I've gone down that rabbit hole a few times on there. It's really, really great website.
And of course, this is the main one, right? The Laystrom website. That's how we get in touch with you.
A little bit, but it's that's certainly something to go review. It's a little bit out of date because it's all the changes and the speed of change that we've had in the last number of years. We need to do some updating in that.
Sure.
In that space, I'll add that to my list of things to do. And, we've started the update, we just haven't finished it. So
right.
But this is a presentation we give to many different applications. I can always be emailed, called, text, whatever. To see how we can help people figure out their challenges and find solutions.
Right. Yeah, I think that's an awesome presentation, and if it's okay, this will obviously be available. Well, we're live streaming now, so people are going to be able to rewatch it or watch it now on LinkedIn, and we'll also have it on our YouTube. So, I just think it's wonderful, and this really brings value. I see everything through a rep's perspective, right? So this is something that really brings value to our customers and establishes us as, hey, yeah, we have sheet metal, but we actually know what we're doing. And this guy's someone you can talk to about. So I know you're a busy guy, so I wanted to ask you just a couple fun questions, and then we'll let you skedaddle. So the number one question, I promised Mark I would ask you this. So
Okay.
Jameson, all right, is that real Irish whiskey, or have the Americans hijacked that?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Is my short. I would, it was certainly, I would assume it's real Irish whiskey. Who owns it today or anything like that, I have no idea from a corporate structure.
Gotcha.
I think you can find out there that most brands in the world are actually owned by just 5 companies or 8 companies or something like that.
That's very true.
So
eventually we're all going to be owned by Google or Amazon.
Yeah. So, it may well be owned by a Nestle or whomever at the top of that food chain. But yeah, it would still be understood to be an Irish whiskey, and I still don't drink it, and it wouldn't be something that I would go to as my first choice.
Best movie of all time?
Impossible to answer. So let me spin that a little different direction.
All right.
I shouldn't say it's impossible to answer, but I think there's complicated answers to that. Favorite movie of all time? I would say one. Certainly one of my favorites, if not the favorite, still is probably Casablanca. It's just an absolutely
phenomenal movie.
But there's a bunch of others that just, if Goodwill Hunting comes on, it's
tough to beat.
Phenomenal movie. There's a lot of really great options out there, obviously, but I think Casablanca would be the one that I would come back to, as a first choice. And there's certainly, Pulp Fiction is an amazing movie.
I love Tarantino.
Talk about
some Tarantino.
Fundamentally different approach to life. Casablanca versus Pulp Fiction. So
that's right.
I don't know what that says about me, but
that's right. I'm a huge Reservoir Dogs guy. I love Reservoir Dogs. I thought that one was phenomenal.
Well, when you talk about dialogue and intensity, that opening, 30 minutes or so of Reservoir Dogs is just outstanding.
Oh yeah, for sure. Another one for me too that's kind of in that same line is No Country for Old Men. That's a really good one. I love that one.
That is a phenomenal movie.
Yeah. So let's see here. Sports. Are you into sports at all? Living in Chicago, I feel like you have to be almost. Chicago is a huge sports place.
Chicago is a huge sport place. I have gotten less and less interested in sports over the years.
Sure.
I've got 2 girls, 2 kids, 5 and 8, so 6 and 8. So I'm far more interested in spending time with them than I'm going to be, watching a game on a Sunday afternoon. But
right.
I'm thankful that the Blackhawks, came back to resurgence after years in the wilderness.
Yep.
The Bears are, they're still interesting. But
they're interesting. They got
to figure out what a quarterback looks like at some point. One would hope.
My fiance's dad is a huge Blackhawks fan, and obviously before the pandemic, we would go to the Hurricanes games because I'm pretty close to Raleigh, North Carolina, and before everything shut down, her dad and her brother, we got them tickets to go to the Blackhawks Hurricanes games, and this was when they were still kind of trying to figure everything out. The Hurricanes beat them; it was a one-time thing, but he's a huge Blackhawks fan, so that's pretty interesting.
The Hawks have been really fantastic obviously ups and downs different years, but
sure.
That little bit of a dynastic run they had was 3 championships in 6 years.
Yeah, top 10 jersey in all of sports. Those jerseys are incredible. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
You could wear those out to dinner, and people think, that's pretty stylish.
People do around here.
Last one. You get to eat one meal for the rest of your life. What are you eating?
For the rest of my life?
Wow. For the rest, you only get one.
All right. If I only get one, then I got to go with. This will be odd. So we cook a lot, right? We cooked 7 days a week before the pandemic.
Right.
There's a soup that I would cook as my favorite meal. It's something that my wife and I have cooked together for years. It's called New Year's Noodle Soup. It's by Heidi Swanson, a chef out of San Francisco, and
Okay.
it's just got this incredible depth of flavor. So you never get bored of it.
Right.
So it's got noodles, it's got walnuts and caramelized onions in the
Wow.
soup, finished with lime. It's got used
Okay.
cranberry beans ideally from Rancho Gordo, who makes the best beans in the world. So it's just this deep soup, and it's one of the highlights of the year for my wife and I, because we only cook it once or twice, and in the
Sure.
last 2 years, my kids have cooked it with me.
Oh, that's great.
So that's just been something and they love it. They love caramelized onions. So that would be the one we go to.
Nice. Believe it, Colin, in my previous life, I was a cook. That's what I did for, I was a chef in an Italian restaurant for about 5.5, 6 years. And then I got into electronics. So here we are. So obviously, I mean, you can look at me and, I'm a big Southern boy. I don't miss many meals now. So, right. we love the food. Well, this has been a lot of fun, man. And I really appreciate you coming on and, walking us through that presentation and kind of telling us, your story. And it's been a lot of fun.
I appreciate the opportunity to do this, and, hopefully it finds an audience that finds it interesting, even on some small level. And appreciate again you setting this up. I think it's an innovative way to communicate, and again, give you credit for doing that. So thank you.
Thanks. Well, real quick before, where can we find you? Just so people can look you up. And
TikTok, Instagram. No, you can find me at Laystrom.com. You can find me from there. But myself, the easiest place to contact me probably from somebody who doesn't know anything is LinkedIn.
Sure.
Because you can get direct to me from that. I mean, Colin.Cosgrove at Laystrom.com, but nobody's going to memorize that and write it down.
No, but you're pretty active on LinkedIn.
And you'll find me on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome, man. Well, you have a great day. And again, I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, man. All right, everyone. That was Colin Cosgrove from Laystrom Manufacturing. Again, this will be live on YouTube and LinkedIn. And we'll also post that. If you're one of our customers, we'll probably shoot this to you in an email as well. So with that being said, I'm Rob Brunson from Wallace Electronic Sales, and thanks so much for taking the time today. Thanks, everyone, so much for watching the stream. It's Rob Brunson with Wallace Electronic Sales. We want to provide you and your company with quality and competitive solutions. We don't care if you're a small OEM, a medium-sized OEM, or a large OEM. We have solutions that we can provide to everybody. Feel free to drop me an email at rob.brunson@west-inc.com. Again, that's robbrunson@west-inc.com. You can also check out our full OEM line card on our website, and that's at west-inc.com. Again, that's at west-inc.com. Thanks so much again for watching the stream, and we look forward to talking to you soon.